reason it's coming directly to board is because with that information, the committee felt it would be enough for the board to make a decision. But I do believe there was a strong preference in that committee for a certain vendor.
Correct, yeah.
Right?
Know that, yeah. There was an indication that they felt that the performance under the agreement would be best served by the NOVAC group.
And I believe that village manager Tyler and myself agreed with that. That was far and above the other application. But either one could do it. So true. Tyler.
Yeah, if you look at the original scorecard that I provided in the packet, with cost and consideration, GovHR was on top. If you remove cost, NOVAC was on top. So that was, I think, so that was one of the root of it. So one of the things that they inquired about was updated cost for just DPW. I think there was great interest in just focusing on public works for 2020 here. So the updated costs are at the end of the memo in your packet. GovHR came in below budget at $28,850. NOVAC is down from their $46,000 number, now they're down to $34,200. That's travel included in that cost.
Trustee Warren.
Sorry. You know, I do. Just reading through it, obviously not being part of the process, not being part of the selection process up till now. You know, I do like that GovHR has a community forum. All that said, Tyler, if we were to get this study done and we were to move forward with some of the recommendations, I imagine there'd be ample opportunity for public comment, be it at our meetings, be it any kind of committee of the whole meeting that we call. I anticipate that we could fill that void.
We talked about that committee, and if you don't mind, I'll paraphrase. This is an internal study. It was brought up during the budget process, and I don't think nobody else has heard this, but one of the main things that we looked at is what's the purpose of the study is for budget purposes, we're going to need to make some hard decisions in the end. And in order to do that, we really needed to look at, we needed a firm that would tell us how to do that. So operational efficiencies or changes. That is one of the reasons, or the main reason that we thought the one company came up above the other, is that the process was complete to make those decisions. But that came up of so once you have the information, then you go through many public iterations of, especially if there's going to be a change in any type of operation for budget purposes, but at least you have the data in front of you. Is there more, Rebecca or Tyler or Committee Chair?
The only other thing that I would add, we did feel that NOVAC would bring a lot of strong experience and information and we're able to narrow down the focus of the study to bring the cost down. The one thing that we talked about as a slight concern with NOVAC and as a bonus, if you will, for GovHR is that GovHR is a little bit more local, so if you have other similar municipalities to really compare to, or semi-local, they have, Wisconsin and Illinois. So, I mean, we went back and forth, with either vendor. There's really pluses and minuses for both of them. GovHR didn't come down a ton from the original proposal when we sort of narrowed the scope, which was a little bit disappointing.
And to add, it would be the cost for DPW and the supportive analysis of finance for the utilities, right?
For utilities, correct.
Right, because DPW, the utility function crosses over, so they would be looking at those processes between finance and DPW for utility purposes. Right. And really, it's a very technical process. I just want to say one more comment that we said in committee. If you've ever heard of priority budgeting, it's very well outlined in the proposal by NOVAC. It looks at what is required, what is required by law at federal, state, and then your local, and then your policies, and then what is optional. And that is how people do budgeting when you're in tough times or fiscal restraints. And I believe we're going to get there, whether it be this year or we're going to get there in 5 years, but we are going to be in fiscal constraints and may have to look at reorganization at some point. And in order to do that, we need very good information. And so that was one of the things I shared in committee. Trustee Martin.
I was looking through the revision, I didn't see their acknowledgement of the utility.
I don't think
That's what I just asked.
I think it was just GovHR, right?
No, when we went back to them, correct?
The scopes, oh, that's the
Are you looking at the service agreement
When you
or
went
their
back to
actual proposal?
January 8th proposal? Where did I mean, I'm just seeing when they talk about doing this at interviewing DPW staff, and I don't see anything about utility billings. You might want to just make sure
We need
that
finance.
I can, yeah, I mean,
it's.
I can double check. I know that was verbalized with them on the
We
phone
should
when I
make
talked to
sure
them,
that's
so I can double check before we sign the service agreement, we'll make sure that's very clear in there too, that that is included, including utilities.
Trustee Warren?
One more thing, if we do in fact to go to Novak, and just, sorry, I'm carrying through my point. I just want to be very clear, maybe this is an ask of village manager, in our communications, that this is something that, it's not going to be a flow through where they're going to make a bunch of recommendations and they're just going to be implemented. There's going to be plenty of opportunities down the line to provide comments. We ran into this a bit on some of the other studies where people think like it's an automatic, we're doing this. And I just want to make sure that people are aware that they will have a chance to provide input, even though there was no official public forum during the course of the study.
Well, and to clarify, it's really up to the board in terms of how they elect to proceed with the information provided. This board has expressed that they wanted this study to be completed prior to decision points and opportunities for the budget in 2021. It'll be up to this group when they hear the information or the analysis to look at that and then to say whether or not they are at a point to be comfortable to exercise that decision. And I would imagine, because Public Works encompasses a number of different areas, that you may feel as if there is low-hanging fruit that you as a board decide to proceed with immediately and provide that direction, and then some that we require a larger vetting period for.
Like parking for transportation analysis, right?
But ultimately, how you decide with it or proceed with that analysis is a decision of this board. But I think that the reason why we're struggling a little bit from a timing perspective is that in order to get someone in and to be able to do this work and get it done to allow you the opportunity to consider something for 2021, the study needs to start now.
And just to clarify too, this is a long-term, I think that expressed in the minutes of the committee, this is a long-term, it's not gonna all be done in budget season. Nothing might be done next budget season, but I do remember the village manager saying in our last budget cycle, if you cut any more, if you wanna make any more reductions to get down to 0% or whatever we want to get to, it's gonna impact service levels. Anything that you do now is service levels, and we're at that point. And so every budget coming forward, unless we have a big increase in property taxes for some reason or other income, we will be making we would have to make some harder decisions, and I believe the committee chair, when we talked about it at committee, it's good to have information while you're making those harder decisions.
Yeah, I think the last point I would like to make is just a reminder to the board that we hope this could be a phased approach, because there's other services we would like to review. I've been working with Rachel on looking at a potential plan for the library and other village center users in that space. So that would be a potential 2021 project, reviewing our police services potentially and some other, just core services that we have here. So while we would just be focused on Public Works for this year, I just want to remind you that I think there's other services that we would like to look at too from an organizational perspective.
I think you had mentioned clerk and
yeah, clerk and customer service, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and the committee members seem to be in agreement that we would continue that based on budgeting funds, but that was something that the staff had expressed very explicitly to us.
Yeah.
Trustee McKay?
I would make a motion to, what was the motion be, Sarah? Or authorize staff to enter into a service agreement with NOVAC to perform an organizational study for the Department of Public Works.
And please, I always ask for the funding. So in the amount of, up to an amount of.
That would be, I have that as $34,200.
Thank you.
$34,200.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Do we have a second? Okay, so we have a motion by trustee McKay and a second by trustee Warren. Any further discussion? Oh, trustee Carpenter, second by trustee Carpenter. Got that one wrong. Any further discussion? Maher, you good? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. And thanks, Tyler, for that explanation.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is 9C, discuss chapters 4 and 5 of the communications plan, social media and communications in public buildings. Tyler.
Hi, yes. So this is back for round 2. I identified all the hopefully all the changes that you asked upon during your meetings. Chapter 4, you can see the actual track changes that I made. Chapter 5 got so messy, I thought it was too hard to read, so I just redrafted it for you, and it's 2 to 3 pages, so I felt everyone can hopefully read through 2 to 3 pages. So, but I don't have anything else to share, so we wanted this to have one more opportunity for some dialogue, so maybe if we start with chapter 4 real briefly and just see if there's any questions on social media.
Can we start with chapter 5, only because at the last meeting, we were talking about chapter 5, and those changes we had requested be reflected in chapter 4, so as long as they're all in 5, like so if you wouldn't mind, could we look at...
However you want like to do it, I'd be happy to do chapter 5.
Anyone have any objection? Okay. Okay, let's start with chapter 5.
Okay. Any questions on chapter 5? This is communication.
And you just let us know what those changes were. There was like 4 or 5.
Sure.
I like these pictures, by the way.
So what we ended up doing, based on your direction, for public buildings, we will have public areas to post. We are calling those announcement boards. So if someone comes to the village wanting to post something, that is the area that we direct them to, and that's the only area they can post, no matter if they're a partner or not. That's where they can post as long as they follow the certain parameters that are listed, which those match the parameters that we do have in the previous chapter. The board asked that anything election related will be reviewed in advance by our clerk.
Well, it would not be posted unless it was by the clerk, from what I remember. Election related, we decided against.
We have that as, that needs to be reviewed by the clerk, and she would review based on the, what is it called, Sarah, the election standard? Statutes.
But can I just stop you there? Does any board, Mike, or whoever was here before, didn't we end with, I'm fine with either, but I believe we ended with nobody should be doing any election except the clerk. We started where you're at, but I believe we ended at that point, and trustee Mental was the holdout, and we finally agreed to that, which I prefer. I thought we all preferred that.
I think that's right.
I do.
I think that's right.
You can look at the video.
So I would be happy to change. That was staff's thought is what the intention was. But if you want to change, or if that's what it is, I can make that change.
Is there nobody yet?
So nothing election can be posted unless it's coming directly from the clerk.
It would be election notices, it would be about referendums, it would, whatever is during an election, even the DN, that's how we got rid of the DN, remember the DNC? We didn't want
statutorily required postings
that you do for election oriented, and hopefully we have a lot of them to make people aware. But that got away from any type of like DNC posting or Republican Party posting.
Sure.
And what's the content and.
Okay, I will make that change.
Okay.
Otherwise, anything that's in the common open space for a display or anything like that can only be village, is what was determined. Okay?
Village meaning.
Village. So.
What about, I just said mass.
I think we haven't specified as any departments or volunteer committees.
Of the village.
Of the village.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, that doesn't.
I was a lot more specific when it comes to like approvals and removals because you wanted specific individuals in there, so that's all listed now.
Positions.
I think those were some of the main things.
Can anyone remember exactly what it was about freestanding, nothing attached to the wall, but what you're talking about, the freestanding, because we had the when you get off the elevator and there's that little podium or whatever it's called, and we have some brochures. When we defined just the village, volunteer committees to me would include the bid, what I consider on our list of the clerks, committees that we appoint, and CDA. I'm just thinking of outside committees. Is it just the bid? Do we appoint anybody else? We have a list of committees that we do appointments for.
Everything on the website.
So is it any committee that the village appoints the members? I just want to be clear on what, because we did talk about the bid, and at that point in discussion, I didn't think that, I was confused, I'm still confused on what that was decided on that.
Yeah, we can define that however you would like. I mean,
I don't want to be the one defining it, I'd like the board.
probably the one in question is the bid, right?
I
Because
know, that's what I'm
all the
asking.
other committees I think are under our code or, are very
Well, the bid and the
clearly
CDA are pretty much the same.
organized, but I don't, yeah, the bid would be the one that I don't know
And the blank.
how you all feel, if that would be included as a village volunteer committee or not.
What are you guys thinking?
I think since we appointed, we included it, but
Do you want to define it as boards and committees that are appointed by the village, and confirmed by the village board? Is that how we define village committee?
Yeah, I can do, you want me to add that in, Paul?
I do, because it's gonna, I just don't want one person on the board having to make that decision.
Okay.
So if that's what we agree on, Trustee McKay, do you have any thoughts? Okay.
Otherwise, you'll see in the attachment, I did some quick photos, so you have a better idea and a visual of where the postings are, and I included in that if it's just village or if it's open to the public, and et cetera.
And could you just identify the two that are, there's only two, right?
Correct. Well, there's only two right current, and then the village is talking, because right now at Village Hall, we don't have a public announcement board.
Okay.
So I worked with Diane, our customer service manager, our deputy clerk, on identifying a location. So once this policy is approved by the board, we'll put up a public announcement board here in Village Hall.
Oh, and we decided, sorry, but we had a lot of confusion, that's why we had the pictures. So we're gonna have them outside the elevator, is that correct? Is that where you identified? The additional public board?
For here?
Yeah.
In Village Hall. The two locations we have specified right now is on the first floor or on the basement, as you enter through the parking lot, take a right and start heading up the stairs. There's a blank wall there before you head up the stairs, so that's one location. And then the other possible location is as you walk up the stairs into the first floor, and you're gonna start taking a right into the customer service area, there's a blank wall there on the right, that would be another location.
Oh, so not by the elevators.
Not by the elevator.
Okay. And what about the board that you use for announcements? That's only you, correct?
For elections, yeah, that's outside.
I mean, for anything, even public notices of meetings.
That's all our stuff.
So on the first.
And we would say that there would be no kind of postings on those boards.
And what about the brochures on the first floor? What was decided?
No, just village.
Okay. The books, historic society book?
That could be sold, but it wouldn't be displayed.
Okay.
So it could be sold there, but it wouldn't be like displayed. Once again, only village items.
Okay.
So it's pretty straightforward. If someone comes, we just direct them to the announcement boards. Every other location then would just be for village.
North Shore Health Department. So they're like the North Shore Fire Department, correct?
Yeah.
What do we decide on that?
Um,
Because they're not an appointed, I just see it here, so.
In the table with the pictures, it says it's closed to the public.
Yeah, it would still be closed, but the one would be the if there's space that is allowed on the electronic information board in Village Center, space allows, they would be allowed in that, but otherwise, they would be directed to the public announcement boards.
Figure 6, brochures and flyers outside the North Shore Health Department office are allowed?
Yeah, that's their own spot that they manage, so.
No, right.
No, right, they
Okay.
don't have like their own
That's their own
brochures,
space.
they keep within that area, it's right outside from their office.
And they manage it?
Yeah,
Correct.
Okay. Nobody else but them?
that's right.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Any other questions? Trustee McKim? And then Trustee Maher. unless,
So in terms of the school, they would be directed to the announcement boards
Correct,
and then possibly the electronic
if there's space.
if there's space.
Correct.
Because they would be under taxing jurisdictions.
Correct.
we got rid of tax.
But that's what, they would fall on the same policy as pretty much any other community group.
Right.
So just really think of it, the policies, we're pushing people to the public announcement boards.
Yeah.
Everyone, as long as they meet the parameters listed in section C, is it? That they would then be able to post those.
And then, under removal, it says that the library or the library director shall be or designee shall be responsible for monitoring any public announcement. And I just wanted to, I noticed that the library director's here. You're aware of this and are
Is that just
willing?
I am. I added the designee.
Okay.
I asked so that I don't have to spend time looking and taking out tax and staples. So.
And they have their own policies that
And
they
we do
follow
have
for
a
the
policy
board.
set by the library
Which
board.
figure is that? Can you just tell me?
That's in section E,
But I think, which
halfway
board,
through.
but which board, number, figure 4? The library posts some of the policies as well as other postings here?
It depends which one, because there's a few in that general
Oh,
lobby
I see, there's
area.
3, 4,
Yeah, so there's like a few areas that they just have their own postings, but there's one that's a public announcement board for that
so figure 2.
you have your own policy in order to post on
Right,
there.
figure 2, we have our own policy that's approved by the library board and everything there is vetted. And then there is the public announcement board that's on the lower level.
Correct, and that one Elizabeth monitors and manages.
Okay, so I was gonna say, can we just put that sentence in that they have a policy, but I do want to have consensus with the library that, like for public elections and things, I don't wanna get into the, so anything that's in here about what we would post on our, I think that's the only thing we don't allow, correct? I mean, on the public board? Is that correct? There's nothing else prohibited on a public board besides material that's related to an election?
Whatever's in the parameters for section C. That would determine what is or isn't allowed on a public board.
It's because that public board is regulated by the library, I don't want to have division on one policy saying something
Right.
and one another, when we have all the boards being kind of
Yeah,
monitored.
so
Is that-
Rachel, do you plan on reviewing the
I-
library board at all, the library policy? Or
I
what?
think we already conform, and I'm just pulling up that policy right now. Posting and distribution of non-library materials, and we have language in the policy that was last updated May 8th of 2019 that,
What does it say?
yeah, let me just look. Because we address the issues of prohibited are notices by, for, related to a political campaign, party, or candidate, notices related to referenda or issues on the election ballot.
What about like DNC? Notifications of
I think
DNC.
that would be party,
Okay,
you know, I think would fall under party.
and that's the only thing you don't allow, is that in that policy?
No, there are also, it conforms to everything
Yeah,
else that's in the village policy, and we did compare and use language, and so, so we cross-compared that.
Great, perfect.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Trustee Maher?
Chapter 100 of our ordinances lists 5 locations where we post official notices and then adds the village website. Like it still has the fire station, the police.
We modified that.
Did we?
We did.
Yeah,
We
maybe
did a supplement last year on that
pull
to
it up?
remove
Okay.
So maybe that
DPW
just
and the
needs to be
police
updated.
station.
Okay.
What about, can you pull it up? And only because maybe, you brought up a good point about website, because those are postings, can we include some language on, I mean, if our ordinances are addressing public announcements in 5 areas plus the website, can we include that in our communications?
Well, we already passed the website chapter,
Yeah.
and we had some language as far as what can and can't be posted.
Did it talk about elections?
Yeah, it's the similar parameters of, the section C that you see, you're gonna see that all over the place.
Because I thought we
So-
just came up with that last meeting.
No, you fine tuned, like, instead of, you added like immigration status. I think there were 2 bullet points that you wanted to merge into one. But all those, I mean, those are gonna be throughout all the sections.
So we adopted the website before we came up with a slightly modified.
Yeah.
And the election was just this last meeting that we came up with that language. From what I understood.
I always had the election language in there.
Where?
I mean, I don't have the specific language that only has to come from Sarah, but I mentioned, where is it? Comments related to a political campaign candidate or party.
Yeah, but it says, to be more specific, any neutral information is allowed. That's not correct.
Well, I have to modify that language based on the direction you just gave me,
Okay,
correct?
and you'll do that for the website.
Yeah, if that's the language you would want, I would have to go back, I'll have to go back and change that, so.
I just want to make sure it's consistent.
Yeah, I mean, what I think I would probably do is, as we go through these, we're gonna end up having like 15 chapters in the end, so, I might just wait till, I don't know if I should just wait till the end and then bring all of them and make that overarching change. I'll
We
talk
could adopt
back to you,
in our motion, we could motion in addition to.
yeah, but maybe you could just
So you're not
maybe I'll
behind.
include that in the recommended motion
Yeah.
when we put it on the agenda, that language would carry over in the other policies already adopted. Okay, I like
So what
that.
is that one?
Yep, ordinance 2091 was passed January 2018. Labeled the posting spots as, shall be outside the adjacent front entrance of Village Hall located on 3930, which is out front there, the lobby of the Shorewood Public Library, and the village website.
So just two, and the village website.
Correct.
We should probably reference that, since
Has it been
we always try to.
I think I'm looking online. It
Okay.
hasn't been updated. I
Updated,
don't
okay.
think. Yeah, so just-
Oh, Jesus. And Tyler, can you just reference the ordinance? I always like to cross-reference anything so just reference the ordinance of where, in case it changes again. And then also,
For meeting notices,
yeah, just whatever the ordinance says.
that's chapter 100 what?
It was
Dash 20?
And then in addition, just one line that says, for information on website posting, see chapter, whatever it is in here. So that people that have questions about website.
Well, here we're only talking about public buildings though, so I don't really want to refer to the website when talking about communication in the
I see what you're saying.
public buildings. Yeah, so for that, I mean, this is all gonna be one packet, so if they want to go to the website, it's gonna be still in the same policy, they'll just turn to the chapter on the website.
I get that. Our ordinance refers to them both in the same ordinance about announcements, so I just feel like if anyone had a question about it, they could reference just.
Do you want me to, or are you talking about reference 120 in the website policy? Is that what you're saying?
Here, for the boards, for the number of boards and where they are. And then, because it references the name website, you could just say, for information on website, see chapter blah, blah, blah. So you're cross-referencing your own document, because if you go to the ordinance, it references both. And there's nothing in this chapter that says website. Did I make sense to you, Tyler? I apologize.
No, can we talk offline?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
All right, anything else, Trustee Maher?
No.
No. Anything else from anyone? Other than that, we have a motion and we.
No.
Just discussion.
Oh,
Yeah, this
sorry,
is only
sorry.
discussion. Is it okay if next time we bring it to consent agenda, knowing that we went through it twice, and if there's any issues, you can pull it at this point, or do you want it on new business?
You mean for this chapter alone?
Yeah, for
Right now.
for consideration, do you want a consent agenda or new business?
Trustee Maher,
Oh,
are you okay with that?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I didn't know if I was yes or no.
All right, great. All right, can we go to chapter 4 now?
We can.
All right. Any questions for chapter 4?
Now let me just go back and
No, I
look.
think you did a great job, including the feedback from the board discussion.
And I will say thank you, and I will say too that Attorney Bear included some language. There were some questions about public records when it comes to social media, so he recommended some language under elected officials to help. A big thing I wanted to highlight
Yeah, you can highlight
was
these.
that there were recommended to separate the guidelines for employees and officials. So you'll see for section G, I created a whole new guideline list for elected and volunteer officials to follow. So, so that was kind of a bigger change. Otherwise, I try to, there was some questions at the end of the meeting about reporting social media violations. So I try to include some language to help direct in case we have any reporting violations.
So we discussed, I don't see the language, we discussed, if there's something on the upcoming agenda, you're not supposed to comment back and forth. But if you're just talking about in general budgeting in a forum, I believe we said that was okay, because what defines a walking forum?
Well, we talked about the quasi judicial, which that's in there. Is that what you're referring to?
Nope, just, okay, so me and trustee Carpenter are in a forum, a group, and we're commenting just in general on budgeting in the village, not an agenda item. This would say that you cannot do that, you cannot both, you know, but I thought we had discussed in depth that what constitutes a walking quorum is when you're talking about an issue that's on an upcoming agenda, because you have to vote. I just want to be careful that.
I try to soften that language. Let me try to see where that section is.
I think it's on page 14. It says, elected officials commenting on other pages, I would say, and in groups, because they're groups, not pages, but anyways, related to village business that pertains to the board or committee on social media, I don't understand it, but directly with other elected officials that serve on the governance board, constituting a walking quorum and violating open meetings law is prohibited. And what does that mean? What is, I assume the attorney.
I mean, what I'm trying to say there is, you know, so you have a board of 7, so if.
We're talking about a Christmas party coming up.
Yeah, so that would be non-village business, that doesn't pertain to your board or committee.
Budget in general.
Well, that would, so you would just, I mean, if only 2 of you are part of a forum.
Well, 3 of us.
Well, is that, I mean, would that be allowed?
That's what I'm asking
elsewhere?
for the attorney
Yeah.
to clarify. It's just, I thought if it's not on an agenda, upcoming agenda, then in general, if you're talking about 0% budgeting or priority budgeting or something that is allowed.
Certainly, you're not going to be muddled to the point where you would not be able to at least tell your constituents what your general policy vision is, or your general policy thoughts on, you know, budgeting, as you said, 0% or whatever it might be. Where you run into issues is, you know, there's a specific issue that's coming up that the board's going to decide an issue on, whether or not we expand or contract a particular department or a program or a specific item that might be coming up. And then there is a discussion amongst a group where there's what they call a walking quorum, where people get together outside the normal confines of a meeting that's publicly noticed and say, hey, let's the 3 of us get together and do X, Y, and Z to block this legislation. That's really what they're talking about. Now, there's actually something called a negative quorum as well, which is saying if you have even less than a quorum, but enough individuals that can theoretically block legislation by taking some acts.
But it's legislation, correct?
Borders.
Yeah,
I mean, theoretically, that's a pretty good demarcation line, in my opinion. Is if there's a specific item that's going to be considered on a future agenda. Now, you know, with respect to the negative quorum, you know, I've never ever seen an opinion by the Attorney General or a case that said a walking quorum can constitute 2 individuals talking to each other. But the idea is, if you say that there's 3 people that we could theoretically, by some Robert's rules of order, we could get together and conspire to block a legislation by blocking a vote and essentially killing something. Theoretically, you can have you can have a negative quorum that can also theoretically violate open meetings as well. But if it's not on an agenda and you're just espousing general policy vision or general policy opinions, you know, you're probably not going to be held in violation of the walking quorum. But you know, where's the line? I mean, if you know that there's an upcoming agenda item but it's technically not on the agenda yet, you know, could some third party say that, well, they violated the quorum requirements? I would argue, as the village attorney, that you haven't, because until that becomes crystallized in the future agenda, it's probably not, it's probably not a violation. But I think he's just talking about general guidelines to avoid getting the village sued.
As long as we all understand what that sentence means and we're in agreement with that, I'm fine. I just don't want if we're gonna adopt this, I don't want us to have different interpretations of it. And so it sounds like if there's legislation pending on an upcoming agenda, or we know it's coming up, like we know, I don't know, housing policy is gonna come up, but
So do you want me to clarify by adding
I
like
don't know
a
if
phrase
it has to
about
clarify, as long
pending
as we
legislation,
understand,
or do we
but-
have alone?
I would put those words in, but
I would, one thing you might do is maybe just say, anytime you interact with other elected officials
on the same
on
line.
the same body, be cognizant of the fact that you don't comment in such a manner as to create a walking quorum or a negative quorum that could arguably, or that could be
But what does
argued
that
to be.
mean? I think that the
And,
words,
see the Attorney General Guide on open meetings law for further, I mean, there's a lot of gray area built into all this stuff. And that's why the guide that's updated every 3-4 years is about that thick, and there's.
but we have to agree on the policy, and we know for sure, anything on an upcoming legislation, it constitutes walking quorum with 2 or more.
Well,
Negative.
yeah, and I think to me, it covers other items as well. Like, there are things upon which elected officials sit as a quasi-judicial and a quasi-judicial. And I have seen municipalities get in trouble where an elected official says, come to the meeting, come to the Board of Appeals meeting and watch me vote against X. And that's supposed to be a quasi.
That's quasi-jurisdictional, yeah.
And that's a problem because it's like the jury deciding to vote guilty before showing up to hear the evidence. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the broader language probably covers all of that.
Okay, well, as long as we're all on the same page. Trustee Maher.
Yeah, on that quasi-judicial, it says, issue upcoming on their agenda. Does that mean the agenda, before the agenda is published, you can say, I'm not sure that word is down there.
So it's on, for those who are following along, it's on the next page, page 15 at the top.
Is it more of a
It's more critical for quasi-jurisdictional that they not speak, or
quasi-judicial?
whatever you call it, but not form an opinion before.
Like, if you know a liquor license is going to be coming up, you should not be
Because you're a
commenting on
judge.
it.
The idea with the due process there is that we're giving a fair hearing, and it's perfectly acceptable to, if you sit on that body, people might give you feedback about it, but generally what you want to convey is that I appreciate the feedback, but I'm not going to make a decision until after I hear the evidence that's presented within the confines of the hearing, and I will vote based upon that. What you don't want to do is give anyone the suggestion that the process has been predetermined, because that's where municipalities and boards get into problems where, well, Jeff and Judy posted on social media that they were never going to vote for this liquor license, and I never had a fair chance. So I think that's what you're trying to convey there. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
I'm totally confused over one thing.
With the quasi-judicial or a different one? Because if it's, I just want to clarify, do you have any recommendations on language for that?
On the agenda. The agenda, I don't know if there's a term for upcoming consideration on their, board or committees consider, I don't know, just the timing of it. When does the clock start running?
Yeah, Nathan, do you have any comments on that? So even if it's something that hasn't been posted on an agenda yet, but it's upcoming at that point, does it start, or is it when a meeting notice?
We have upcoming right now, so upcoming can be broad.
As long as it's broad enough,
Yeah.
future business.
So just maybe,
that would be,
yeah, you want me to do that?
piece of paper, future business, that would be good, that's great.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I just wanted to
No,
make sure I
very
clarified.
Did you get that good idea I had?
I got it.
You did?
Yeah, future business.
All right.
Trustee McKay.
But keep in mind too, that it's not the communication that creates the problem, there's a presumption that there might have been something going on. But if the communication is such that the evidence is such that people didn't conspire to affect the outcome, then there was no impermissible communication either. So it doesn't mean that if 2 or 3 people bump into each other in the line at the fish fry on Friday night, and somebody says, oh, we've got X coming up on the agenda, oh, it's gonna be fun, it's gonna be a late meeting, whatever, and you talk for a couple of minutes, you didn't violate the open meetings law because you didn't discuss anything that you didn't decide how it was going to end up or how you were going to vote.
Okay.
Do you have another one?
Yeah, it's a major one. So number 2 is elected officials. Okay, so elected and volunteer, right? Let's just go with elected for a second.
Okay.
The only thing it talks about here is public records and walking forum. We had talked about, and this is why I'm saying I'm confused, because I just posted about Martin Luther King, okay, on my president page. And this doesn't tell me that I need to have identification that I'm talking as the village president, as one person of the board, and it's, remember we had that disclaimer, where did that go?
That's for guidelines, that's under section G.
Hold on. So it's a different section. Okay.
So that number 2 for elected officials, if you look at the heading above, that's only talking about who are authorized personnel. So that's only so we kind of had village staff identified as authorized personnel for social media pages.
I would take number 2 out then, because we don't.
So what I can do, so that makes more sense, I can take that out and I can move that section under the guidelines, so it's all in one section. Is that what you would like?
That would be fabulous.
I think that would be great.
Because even for volunteer committees, I don't want them assuming that they are authorized to post on our social media.
All right.
Correct?
I
Because
love
then
that.
it goes into comments of our official pages, but, and then when you get to G,
Okay.
it says that it talks about the disclaimer. And where do you put the disclaimers? Is it in each post, or at the bottom, or is it on your page?
It just has to be viewable on your page.
So I should just put it in?
So some social media sites allow you to like pin something at the top or have a,
Okay,
a
so if it
description of
doesn't
your
then-
page. You can just put it there. It's in one location, you're set. If you literally wanted to post it with every single post that you do, you could do that. It just has to be visible on the page.
So, and then we talked about do not reference or cite a village employee without their express consent. Now, does that mean their title or their name? Because we talked about 2 things. One is referencing, the village manager has publicized blah, 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 and does it say that's fine?
So I changed that bullet point to say, do not reference or cite village employees without their express consent unless sharing content directly from an official page or website or listing a department head customer service as a direct contact for more information on a
So what
particular
if I-
village service or issue.
So what if I said, on an upcoming agenda, on Monday, we will be evaluating the village manager. So it doesn't say
And
any,
you said her name, Rebecca Ewell?
it doesn't have to be named, that's my question.
Why?
I'm just, that's my example, but I'm just.
Yeah, it just, it's
Sorry.
you came up with on the cusp.
Right.
But I get what you're trying to get at.
I just want to be clear, like, is it the name, like, you don't want to, it's not, I get where you're going, you don't want to say,
Well, if we,
Director Burshek, or whatever the
Okay.
last name is said
Yeah.
this, and then you didn't make sure that she really approved of her saying that.
so my point to you would be if we have posted the agenda, that's on the, and that's included on the agenda, that's on our website. So you're referring to something on the website, right?
Does it have to be a name or can it be a position?
Um,
I'm thinking you want names there. I mean, that the purpose is not to quote something.
I mean, if you say like the title, I mean that,
What's the purpose of that?
this came from other policy examples. I think it's just trying to limit,
Quoting someone is my guess.
well, and,
How about slamming them?
yeah, I mean, I think it's trying to protect their, their privacy and their identity. I mean, some individuals don't want to be in that, that realm. And like, I think while some positions, and I think that's why we include department heads, like, some positions, you are and whether you want to or not. Like, that's the
I
nature of your
understand.
position, but there's
I
other
object to
positions
this,
where that's
though.
not the
Like, the
case.
police chief and I, as a president, I post something, the police chief and I met, we were to follow up on blah, 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 and I want to give you some of the things that came out of this meeting. Do I have to call Chief Nimmer?
No, under this, you could do that,
Because why?
department head. And it's a direct contact for information.
Okay, so I didn't say his name.
Whether you say his name or not, it doesn't matter, it'd still be allowed.
Okay. I'm glad that's not.
So I got the general consensus, I thought, from the board that we felt department heads is at least,
He is a
or if you wanted to refer to customer service, because a lot of times when we do our communication, we refer to customer service as a go-to for general information.
But I said the police chief and I met. Anyways, I do this a lot, and that's why I'm asking a lot of questions, because I'm probably the one that posts the most as the president of the village.
I mean, if you ask me for my opinion, I think that's okay, I don't see
Okay, as
anything
long as
wrong
you
with
reflect in
that.
here, thank you for that.
But then once we, you know, if there's comments that are like slandering or doing that to employees, that's where we look through the parameters, and there's multiple things that I think would show that that wouldn't be acceptable.
It doesn't say that, but okay.
It says it elsewhere though.
Yeah,
It's also
It's-
good practice.
It's in a few different
Just-
places. But in all the examples you gave, I don't see any issues with those. Just my personal opinion.
And President Shaw had a comment at our committee meeting that I think was valid. And it is, what is the, okay, so this whole, you know, how do you monitor and what was her, I mean, she had a valid point, her question.
She asked about the process, that if a resident had a process about, like another board member or something, like, how would we go about it? My answer at the time was parameters in the HR manual, but it was correct that only speaks to employees, not elected officials. So we added the last two comments in there to try to at least add some direction. If we had like some kind of code of ethics or something like that, I think Trustee Amenta made this point, which I thought was accurate. Like if we had a code of conduct, I mean, that would be something you could refer to, because typically for official that might cite a more specific process. But we don't have that at this stage right now. So this was what I was recommending as steps to at least start a discussion if there was a reported violation.
Okay. And then the D, where you have what we're not supposed to be talking about, does that apply to G?
Let me get there.
Because it's underneath comments from the public.
So these are parameters for comments on village social media pages. So this is on the Village of Shorewood website. If someone from the community commented on one of our posts, it would have to follow those parameters.
So
Which those will be posted on our page once this is accepted.
do they apply to G?
If any of you are commenting on a Village of Shorewood social media page, yes.
No,
If you're commenting on your pages, no. These are only for village social media pages.
So when President Shaw was talking about how would you do profane, obscene, or not pornographic, but, and thank you for modifying that, but at that time it said rude or whatever it was.
Right.
I thought that applied to elected official posts at that time, and then now it just kind of just disappeared. And I'm good with it disappearing, I just want to make it clear that those things are not applying to G, which is our own posts.
Yeah, that's commenting on any village Shorewood pages.
Okay.
I mean, for your own pages, I mean, that's kind of your freedom of
I agree.
speech in a way, right?
Change.
So, I mean, those parameters are not the same.
Okay.